everybody. Hey, hey, hey. Izzy Schwartz, shalom to you. You might have come through the most holy season that you have, and may God bless you if that is the case. Solomon, I'm glad to see you back. Bernadette, Robert, I'm so glad to have you all here. So let's get right
Every
to
now
it.
and then I'm gonna have to
I
turn around and tell my dogs to stop barking.
That's all right, boy.
When I'm not talking, I will keep it on mute.
All right, honey, it's all good. And so let me just say hello, and let me get right to it because I have to read a little bit. And we are up in 20 seconds just so that I can have a clean start. Okay. We're up in five, three, two. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you as we talk about ICE. They've been deployed in Chicago, as have the National Guard. But they're on their way to Portland. They're on their way to cities all over the country, along with the military. The president promised that he wanted to deal with the enemy within. It's just that the enemy within is you and it's me. And I think we need to talk about that, the kind of atmosphere that has been created. We should not speak of the police state as some place that is down in the future ahead, an aspirational place. We are here. We are here. And we need to talk about that. What does all of that mean? Indeed, the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 really it forbade the U.S. armed forces to be used against the citizenry. And yet the president did call for that. So what does that mean? And we have not heard any protests. We've not seen any resignations of these top generals who were there. Uh, what does that mean? What happens when you deploy ICE to a building that had been in disrepair for quite some time? Residents had been complaining about the building for quite some time. Stairwells were darkened. The amenities that had been promised to these persons when they signed their leases, well, they were not available. And the place had been purchased for $18 million and it was in receivership. And now, can it be purchased for pennies on the dollar? I don't know. There's a lot, there's a financial incentive, many people are alleging, about the seizure of this particular building because, contrary to many rumors, this was not a center of gang activity and ill repute. It was a place where that did have some migrants. Maybe some people were illegally ensconced in the United States, whatever that really, really, really means, because these people have been brought here. No one talked about the Ukrainians that have been brought to Chicago, nearly 40,000 of them in one fell swoop. Perhaps it's because they're European. Perhaps because some of the highest placed people in our government are of Ukrainian extraction, like our former Secretary of State, under whom they were brought into Chicago, like our governor, who is of Ukrainian extraction. I don't mind people in trouble coming to the country, but somehow or another, Europeans who are brought to the United States are welcomed, and black and brown migrants and immigrants are the problem. They're admonished. We need to deal with them because now we are seeing an encroachment. Let's talk about this executive order. That's part of the backdrop. The mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, who's had so many issues dumped in his lap, and he's tried to deal with them in and as humane a fashion as he could possibly do. There was money that was given to him, that was allocated to him. Many African Americans are saying, "Why didn't you give that money to us?" I hear you, but they were specifically allocated for the migrants and for specific issues. If he used them for anything other than what they were earmarked for, those funds, he would have gotten into trouble. The migrants cannot get health care here. No, they cannot. That has been an abject lie that has been passed around, that has not really been meaningfully refuted by the corporate media. Let's talk about what's happening here. Let's talk about this enemy within. You know you're it, right? I hope you're carrying your ID around with you because you certainly need to do that. According to this report from Block Club Chicago, it's one of our leading local publications. Federal agents, they write, will no longer be able to use city-owned property as staging areas, according to an executive order filed by Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson on Monday. The order also encourages private property owners to put up signs to deter agents from assembling on their property. The order follows reports that federal agents recently used city owned lots for immigration operations. Actions that city officials said erode community trust and violates Chicago's welcoming city ordinance. Everyone, I want you to meet me on Facebook, Santita Jackson and Friends. That's the only place where I can get friends. Please go there. Please meet me on Instagram, Santita Jackson IG. And of course, the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page, Santita Jackson Show. You all are here watching right now. Join the Morning Stars in the chat. Become part of that family. I encourage you to do that. The Santita Jackson Show. Like and subscribe and share the show. And of course, on X, you can reach out to me at Santita J. I've got a tremendous panel who can talk to us about where we are right here. Of course, the Director of Social Justice, that's right, at the Progressive Baptist Convention, my brother, Reverend Darrell Gray. And actually, he's a cousin. He's married to my cousin, so it makes him my cousin too. So there we go. And well, Size Moore, come on, that's what she is. And Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, and of course, Attorney Darrell Jones. I'm going to begin with you. You and Barbara Arnwine can be heard on WOLDC every Tuesday at 12 noon. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. I encourage you, everybody, today to tune in to that show. Um, this is also occurring within this context, Attorney Darrell Jones, as I'm looking at people I'm having to let people know you do need to carry your ID with you. You do know this. You don't have ID because a lot of our young people don't have ID. Identifications cost. Have you tried getting your birth certificate? I mean, a passport is not an easy document to obtain. So let's start there, everybody. As we're coming into 2026, I think it's going to be infinitely more difficult because, for example, the people who were in this apartment building who had been removed from the apartment building, well, they went back to destroyed apartments. So many of those persons won't be able to live there. The building is in receivership. And once they work out the ownership, will the rents be affordable? It's a lakefront neighborhood, everybody. And the backdrop of this, or the context of this, is that the Obama Center is in the neighborhood. So a lot of people are being taxed out of the neighborhood, are being gentrified out of the neighborhood, if you will, um, because the Obama Center is coming. You've got two 9-hole golf courses to which this building is adjacent. It is a 2-minute walk from the Lake Michigan, the beach. So it is a really, really lovely area. That was a restricted area until the mid 60s. See, you have the North Shore of Chicago, you have the South Shore of Chicago. The North Shore is WASP and affluent. Well, that meant Jewish people were excluded. So they moved to South Shore, where they were not excluded. So the North Shore South Shore looks like the North Shore, just on the south side of town. And many Jewish people moved out of the neighborhood in the 60s. And many people of all backgrounds, if they can afford it, are coming into this neighborhood. So I kind of want to give people, Darrell, both Darrells and Ron, I want them to have a sense of the neighborhood that this happened in. It is a solidly middle class neighborhood, a solidly middle class Black neighborhood. Very affluent neighborhood, very affluent areas of South Shore are literally across the street and around the corner and blocks away.
Hmm.
So it's stable, right? And the people who got into that building, um, even as renters, were glad to be there because the bus literally stops right there. They can get downtown within an hour. Or if they want to catch the train, within 30 minutes, with 15, 20 minutes, they're downtown. It's that kind of neighborhood. So I think it's important for people to know that, Attorney Daryl Jones. That's part of the reason that this raid has resonated so profoundly with people because they never thought that it would happen here. So,
Hmm.
talk to me because now IDs are something that we should be carrying all the time.
Santita, yeah, I never thought that we would get to a point in this country where folks would have to walk around with their identification in case they were stopped by the police or by what used to be the Gestapo to check your credentials to see, do you really belong here? Is this really your area? Is this really your country? Is this where you reside? It's a horrible place, I think, that where we've gotten to at this point in time with regards to the identification. And let's be clear, because when you have the raids that occur that disrupt people's lives, that go through their homes and everything else, if you don't have your ID with you when you are being removed, there's a strong probability that your ID may be destroyed or removed or displaced, and you're unable to find it. And then at that point, if you are if you are a person that I guess appears to be of something other than American, uh, and they're asking for your identification, what do you do? It's gone. It's not there, and it's a horrible position in which we are being placed, and the situation that's being created. You know what makes it even worse, and you've heard me say it, and I'll say it, and I'll say it, and I'll say it again, is the U.S. Supreme Court's decision that came down that said that policing authorities, ICE in particular, or CBP, right, Customs Border Patrol, they can stop you because of how you look, how you sound, where you work, where you're living, and demand that you prove that you belong in this country. That is a horrible place for us to be right now. So now that we have these raids that are going on and they're gathering people that may be undocumented as well as people that are US citizens, and holding them for periods of time until they can prove themselves, or until the government gets to the point of feeling as though it's ready to do the investigation to see that you're actually a citizen and belong here, or a resident and belong here. Yeah, it's a bad place where we are right now. It's a bad place. It's not going to be something that creates any feelings of community. It's not going to be something that creates a willingness after this begins to wear down. After this, and we will get beyond this. But once we get beyond this, and while we're in this, if you thought that police community relations were at an all-time low, it's going lower. It's going to get worse. And that's what the real fear for me is in all of this, is what happens to the folks that they're taking and holding wrongfully. What's happening with the people that are just living their lives lawfully, but are invaded, with these officers that are coming in under the color of law and disrupting their lives. It's a horrible situation that we're in right now. Thank you. That's a horrible situation.
But why do you think it's going to worsen community police relations?
It's going to worsen police community relations because the more, see, there's certain people, there are a lot of people right now that think this doesn't affect me.
Right.
This is about them. So long as it's about them, I'm all right. Yeah, let's get rid of them. Get
Mhm.
rid of them. But when them becomes you, and you realize that it's actually you and not them, or you are them, but then you're going to see that the relationship between the community, particularly the African American and the community of color, and the police department really deteriorate much more because it's going to be an untrusting thing. And what many people don't differentiate between federal law enforcement and local law enforcement. What they see is law enforcement, and if what they see happening is, is a law enforcement taking people that they shouldn't be taken, taking actions that they shouldn't be taken, roughing people up, going through their stuff, breaking down their doors, breaking up their furniture, whatever. It's saying they're searching for people. It doesn't stop just with the federal officers. It reverberates. It runs through all law enforcement. And then as a result of that, you're going to have a community that's going to be, no, I don't want to be messed with the law. I don't want to be anything to do with them. I'm not going to help them. I see what they're about. And you're going to have that type of mindset that really sets in deeper. It already exists for the Black community because for the most part, Black community is distrusting of police officers and law enforcement. But now this is about to worsen it.
Well, and we want to be trusting, and you have a lot, let me just say, you have a lot of great law enforcement officers.
Absolutely.
Of course.
You absolutely do. And when you are in trouble, you are looking for the police. So there is that. Unfortunately, one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. And when you have people who bring their biases and their prejudices that they don't try to work on to work, that becomes a problem. The corruption in the system, in any institution, is always a problem. I would not throw out the church because I've seen abuses in the church. Power breeds a mindset of abuse if it's unchecked by God. That's always the case. Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, as really, you craft these laws. You see what our mayor in Chicago has done. And you see, in Minneapolis, State Senator Omar Fateh, who won the caucus of the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, and they withdrew their endorsement, but he is closing in on the mayor in terms of with the polling. He said, "Look, there were measures that we put in place behind George Floyd that have not been instituted, that have not been enacted, and that's a problem. That's something that we could do something about, but that's not happened. And so, there are issues everywhere. So what do you make of this? Because you are in one of these states where you got everybody there. Now more Black people live in the state than any other state in the union. You have a huge Latino population, right? And you got a significant white population. You really have everybody there. We think California is the rainbow nation, but that's Texas.
So melting pot.
A heavy Black immigrant and migrant population because of oil, right? You got a lot of Africans there. You got a lot of everybody. You got a lot of Mexicans who are working there. A lot of international community because that's where you are. You're at the border. So, you're a border state. So what do you make of this raid that happened in the middle of the Black community?
Well, I don't want to be redundant. I agree with a lot of what Attorney Darrell Jones stated, and also want to applaud your mayor of Chicago for pushing back. I really give him props, man. This guy is standing 10 toes down. That's the kind of leadership that we need to face a fascist president and authoritarianism. We need that kind of bold leadership that is unafraid. I want to commend, Governor Pritzker as well, because Illinois has not said, "Hey, we're going to lay down and take it." They're saying we're going to push back, and we are going to do everything we can to stop it. We're going to call it out by name. We're going to use the bully pulpit to let President know and through the media that this is not right. This is not, we're not sanctioning this, and we are doing everything we can to stop it. So I want to just say that at the outset. I do believe that this is troublesome for a couple reasons. One of the primary reasons is that these are not trained law enforcement officials the way that police are, and the way that police are trained to uh, work with citizens. They're trained on de-escalation. They're trained to go out to interact and how to work with the community. You know, community policing is what we call it. Well, these people who are doing these things are not trained in these efforts. And so you're getting people out there that are just running roughshod, and then you get encouragement from president's inner circle about just rough them up, right? Just we don't give a damn, you know. There'll be collateral damage. In other words, they're looking to provoke a confrontation as opposed to de-escalating one. They're trying to create chaos. And so I think it's problematic, and this is a slippery slope heading towards a full police state where President Trump declares martial law. And so this to me is all a design to be able to circumvent a free and fair election for the president to be a holdover president. I think we're seeing the beginning stages of what the objective is. And I'm ashamed, being in Texas, that Governor Abbott has authorized the Texas National Guard to be used as a pawn for President Trump in Illinois. I'm not okay with that. In Texas, we're not okay with that. We as a state, the MAGA extremists are, but the overwhelming citizens are saying, why are we doing this? What does this have to do with Texas anyway? So, Santita, I say all that to say, this is very disturbing. This is very much a problem. And to Daryl's point, I want to go back to where people say, well, you know, it's not me. I'm from America. What do I care? I don't need to carry around papers. That it may not be today as we talk on this day, but what happens tomorrow when they change the game and now it's Black folks? So we can't turn a blind eye as Black Americans because we're saying it doesn't impact us. It's just the, you know, if you want to be a negative, oh, that's just the Mexicans. No. We cannot have that attitude. We must say this is un-American, just like we wanted people of good conscience to say that it is not right to treat African Americans this way in Jim Crow. We as people, as Americans, have to say, no, not on our watch, or we're going to allow this kind of fascist system and oppression against our Latino, and it ain't just Latino, but other immigrants. So yes, it is time to flush this stuff out, because this, Santita, is mushrooming, and pretty soon it's going to be out of control. And we're not going to be able to peel back that onion. So we got to stop it now before it evolves into a full police state. Just like Daryl said, you got the Gestapo type of police with the show me your papers. What? Are you kidding me? In America? So I'm very troubled by it, but I'm encouraged when I see leadership up and pushing back. And we need more people. We need more military to say no. We need more people of good conscience of all races, creeds, and colors to say no, not in America. This is not Russia. This is not some dictatorship. This is not some authoritarian regime. This is not some fascist nation. This is the land of the free, the home of the brave. So, Santita, I'm ready to push back and do what I can to stop this from reaching the point of no return.
Reverend Daryl Gray.
Well, my sister cousin, I tell you, first of all, Daryl Jones and I go back. We go back a long way with my work with SCLC and Dr. Steele, and his work at Barber. So, and we always tease each other about the fact that he spells his name wrong, but it's okay. I'm older. I can say that. And Representative Reynolds, please know that many of us across the country are in solidarity and support of what you and others in Texas are doing. We are paying attention. We're ready and willing to show up. Santita, thank you. I'm not surprised at the content. I'm not surprised at what you do and the timeliness of the conversation. Let me start out by saying, Dr. Joseph Lowry used to have a saying, everything has changed, but nothing has changed, former president of SCLC. And when you and Attorney Jones talks about papers, as Black folk, we're not used to people asking for our papers. Slave papers. Slave paper. In order for slaves to travel from one place to the other, they had to have papers signed by their master saying that it was okay. This is not new to us. And even if you were free, you had to have papers to prove that you were free. You've got, Santita, First Nations people who are also getting stopped, and they're not only being asked for ID, they're being asked for proof of blood citizenship. The fact that they have to prove that they are actually First Nations people. I'm not going to say what has already been said, but this is a siege mentality. We are entering into what can be very easily the representative talked about this chaos. We're already in that, and now it is moving more towards a siege mentality in order for Trump and his minions to justify coming in more heavier than they are coming in now. It is a justification where the government, it's one thing to talk about police relationships, but it's not just police relationships, particularly when you're looking at police and National Guard and Marines and Trump talking to generals who he's saying, listen, we're going to do training in U.S. cities. We're going to let you do training in U.S. cities. How does this come about? It comes about in weaponizing law enforcement, National Guard, Marines, these ICE people who are coming, I don't know where they're coming from, like I said, and bringing all that together and legitimizing it with badges, legitimizing this weaponization with badges, saying that whatever they do is legal. And if you look at it, if you touch one of them, it's a federal charge. It's an automatic, just touching. It's a federal charge. And so siege mentality, changing the law on state levels as well as national levels, federal levels, where you begin to victimize protesters. You've got people of color, Black and brown, because the reality is when you talk about Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, unless they open their mouth, you don't know if they African American or Latin American. And so you're absolutely right. You've got people, Santita, people of color, particularly Latino and Hispanic, who are quitting their jobs. I'm not talking about the people who have been targeted or labeled as undocumented, but because you have people of color who are living in fear because they live in these communities, you got people who are legal leaving their jobs. You got people who are quote unquote legal getting out of school. You've got people who are legal who don't want to be seen in public, even though they may have all their paperwork. They don't want to get caught up in it. And so Attorney Jones and Representative Reynolds are absolutely right. And I want to close with this. Trump just let in, he don't have a problem with bringing people into the country as long as they're white.
From South Africa.
Yeah, 60 South Africans. 60. granted refugee status. And Trump said that their applications were based upon the fact that they were victims of discrimination, although the South African government said that they had proven that these individuals were suffering absolutely no racial discrimination. But listen, this is not surprising to any of us. This is for us, for those of us like Representative Reynolds, like Attorney Jones, like Barbara Anwan, and so many others who continue to have these conversations. It's not new. The question becomes, Santita, and you're pushing us to that. You know, what do we do? What is our game plan? Mm-hmm. Project 2025 exists. They've had a game plan for years. Mm-hmm. And so we need to meet. We need to have one of them good old family meetings where we have Dr. Antoine and Attorney Jones and Representative Reynolds and the Congressional Black Caucus and the National Legislative Black Caucus and Push and Rainbow Push, and we need to have a family meeting. And we need to prepare ourselves for 2026 because Representative Reynolds is absolutely correct. All of this is geared to skew the general election for 2026. There's a lot of other reasons, but the main reason with the gerrymandering and the redistricting here in Missouri too, the governor just signed off in Missouri. We're taking them to court. But all of this is also to exhaust us. It is to have us so exhausted legally, financially, from an activist point of view, state legislators. It is all of that to just throw stuff on the wall so that as we are cleaning stuff off the wall, they are preparing their finale, preparing for the finale, which is November 2026. And so I know Progressive National Baptist Convention, and we've talked to other social justice directors from National Baptist, from the AME Church, Church of God in Christ. We've had conversations, but we're waiting for Representative Reynolds and Darrell Jones and Reverend Jackson and Dr. Wilson. We're waiting for others to kind of convene us, to give us some marching orders so that we're not looking at July, trying to put a plan together in July of 2026.
But let me ask you this, and which goes to organizing, because of course, you and your brother, Kevin, may he rest in power, he would always say, organize, organize, organize. You know, that was Kevin's mantra. He came out of the 84 campaign, everybody. Surprisingly, we had a dead heat in South Carolina. I mean, Reverend finished really strong in the South in 1984. But Kevin said, no, we want a convincing win 4 years from now. So the day after the South Carolina primary, he started registering people to vote. He said, we got 4 years. We got 4 years to get this done. So it was a 4-year plan. My question is, what about the church? And I say this because I was talking to Shapiro a little bit earlier today, who weighs in here, and she is very helpful with this show. I said the schism between the Black and brown communities is very disturbing to me. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be. Because we have seen through the Jackson campaigns, we saw people coming together. And it was an effort, but you had a lot of people who were willing and who were excited to do it. You know, you remember Armando Gutierrez, mm-hmm. who was head of the Hispanic desk, the Latino desk. Right. You remember, of course, Jim Zogby, the Arab American desk.
Right.
You remember Ron Walters.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just we had some of it, Carolyn Kasdan. I mean, we've had, Jewish. We have had everybody, and they were all working together at the same time. But key to that was the church. I said it, and I said to Shapiro, I said, if this is not resonating in the big black churches, you're not winning. I said, our Latino brothers and sisters have got to come into the community, into this community, and make themselves known.
Right.
Because that's what, I mean, you knew Reverend's campaign was going somewhere because he had the black church, which he'd been organizing in for our rights, not to run for president, for 20 years before that. But you know that that's where we are. Whatever our issues might be with this, that, and a third in the church, organized religion, whatever it is, that's where we are, Reverend Gray.
And we're prepared. We are preparing. But and as I said, I've been in conversation with director generals and directors for social justice with National Baptist, Church of God in Christ, AME Church. We've even reached out to some of our allies in the Jewish community and in the Catholic community to do exactly what you said. But we need Representative Reynolds. We need the National Legislative Black Caucus, because what the church is able to do is bring numbers. We can give you numbers, but we don't have the expertise as a Darrell Jones to talk about policy and to do the voter education. And so we need the Transformative Justice Coalition. We need you to come in and help us to educate the voters, Representative Reynolds, so that we can mobilize the voters. But we've got the numbers, and we're having, Santita, to your point, you're absolutely right. We are having those conversations. We are looking at convening in Montgomery in December around the 70th anniversary of the Montgomery bus boycott. So we're looking at convening on the 5th and the 6th of December in Montgomery, which we talk about Selma a lot, but there would be no Selma bridge crossing had there been no Montgomery bus boycott. And so we're going back to Montgomery, and obviously needing Reverend, needing push there, needing the Black politicians and Black activists to join us down there as we convene. But yes, you're right. The church, the church still has that influence. The church still has that impact. Most of our churches are 90 to 100% voter registration centers, but we're still only less than, I want to be nice, but I want to also be real, Darrell. We're still around 30, 40% voter participation. And that's being nice. But the reason for that, Santita, is that we need Rainbow Push to come back and to make that overture to the Black church and to say, we're prepared to educate. We're prepared to help you organize. We need Rainbow Push to do that. We need Darrell Jones to do that. We need Ron Reynolds to do that, and the organizations that they represent. And until that coming together happens, and that also includes, organized labor, AFL-CIO. We've talked to Fred Redmond and others. So let's make that happen. Reverend Jackson was able to bring that coalition together. The problem right now is, unfortunately, we don't have that person. Reverend was able to do it. When Reverend said, y'all come and let's convene, and there was no question about us coming and convening, be it black elected officials or activists, Darrell, but when that was happening. Well, who calls the meeting now? Who calls the family together now? Is it Barbara Anwan? Is it Reverend? And I love Reverend Sharpton, but who is it? Somebody's going to have to do it. And the Black church is open to receive all of y'all and to take our marching orders, to speak to our congregations, but we're not going to sit and tell a lie and say that we as a Black church are going to be the ones to come up with the talking points. That's not what we do.
Well, and to your point, the great thing about Rainbow Push is that it's been the bridge to the legal community. It's been the bridge to jobs, securing the jobs. That's the Urban League. The NAACP has been our legal arm. This has been the church arm that touched. Reverend has always had a global view, and we have to do that. Plus, unlike many civil rights organizations, we own the building. So when you come to Chicago, we don't have to get a hotel. That's important. Real estate. I mean, that's one of the things. We got to get into land justice pretty soon because we used to own a lot of land, and we don't anymore. But we do own the building, and you know what? You and I can, when we get off the air today, we should convene and talk about how to make that happen immediately, because we don't have the luxury of waiting. Oh well, what, in a couple of months, honey, you don't know if somebody's gonna be snatched up in a couple of months. My mother told me last week, I hope you are speaking English loudly and clearly when you are walking down the street. Yes, my mother did say that to me. And I said, okay. She said, oh, no, 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 no. I've been with you, baby. I don't want anyone to have a doubt. She said, because she kind of laughed. She said, because you'll get snatched up. I said, and you won't see me again. Because people are being taken only heaven knows where.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is really, and many of us thought that it was not going to be us. But guess what? Untrue. It's all of us. So, Attorney Daryl Jones, I'm going to mute everyone because we want to make sure we don't have any feedback. Make sure your audio is off in the background. But, Daryl Jones, why don't you respond to what the Daryl with the proper spelling of your name had to say? He said nothing. I'm like, okay, the proper spelling of the name. That's all right. I ain't mad. But Daryl with one R.
Santita, I certainly appreciate what Daryl, what Reverend Gray said. And one of the things that I really want to emphasize is this one, particularly when it comes to the African American church, is that the African American church is being called into action. They are, and they are responding to the calls. And one of the things that I've wanted to just lift up very quickly is that, Barbara Arnwine and I have now been part of what has been created throughout some of the southern states across the country of the new National Christian Leadership Movement. And there's some 15 different states that are represented within that, and they're Black churches. And what they're focused on is doing precisely what we're talking about here today, is to coming together on issues of importance to the African American community, whether it's voting rights or civil rights. That's their focus. They're going to be convening, and this is an excellent opportunity, I think, to lift it up. They're going to be convening on October the 15th at NDC at the Supreme Court. Because on October the 15th, there's a major case dealing with voting rights that's occurring. It came out of Louisiana, and it's dealing with gerrymandering and redistricting. In essence, the Voting Rights Act Section 2 is what is at issue. And what happened was that all these Black folks started moving into Louisiana, and Representative Reynolds will get this right off the top, to the point that the 2020 census indicated that there needed to be another congressional representative deserving of a majority minority community. That's what happened in Louisiana. The Louisiana state government said, no, we ain't giving you a second one. We don't care what the Voting Rights Act says. You ain't getting it. No, we're going to stack and pack and put you all into one district and break you up so we can continue to hold the power for Steve Scalise, as well as Speaker Mike Johnson, right? We got to protect our people. We're going to break y'all up. And it wasn't, Press Robinson, who is an old-time activist coming out of Louisiana, filed suit in 2022 for the violation of that map that was put in place. The federal district court said, Press Robinson, you're probably going to succeed. You're right. It is a violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So as a result of that, what then happened, is that they changed the map to create that second district because the court said, we're going to do it for you if you don't do it, Louisiana State House. And the State House said, we need to protect our people. We'll draw the second district. We'll give them the second district. But what then happened is that some of the white folk in Louisiana said, well, wait a minute. There's this equal rights protection clause. And the equal protection clause, we think this violates our 14th and 15th Amendment rights under that. And so as a result, they filed a lawsuit saying that they were being discriminated against. This is the matter that now has gone up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court now will decide whether or not racial interests that are taken under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, whether or not that's constitutional, in essence, is what they're deciding, or if it should be set aside, believing that the country has gotten to a point where we need to set aside the stuff about race, because race is no longer that important in our country because of all the advances that have been made. I raise that to say this, that on October the 15th, not only in Washington, D.C. at the Supreme Court, will the new National Christian Leadership ministers and their congregations be coming to Washington. We invite everybody to come and join them in Washington as well. But they're also going to be in Louisiana at the State House there. So the Black churches are involved, and Reverend Gray is 100% on point. Only thing that they really needed is that they're not necessarily the attorneys, they're not necessarily the activists. They may not know exactly how to get there, but if you give them the map and you show them where to end up, they can drive their message and drive the congregation and drive the community in that direction. That's what's needed in this moment across the board. Whether we're dealing with immigration or if we're dealing with voting rights, we need to be certain that we're putting in place the plan to be executed by the church, the plan to be executed by the people that are interested in having a democracy and having a representative form of government in place, Santita. So that's a long way of answering that question, but that's what I think is needed in this moment, and that's what I think of what my brother Daryl has just raised.
No, that's a very consequential case, because I think that, interestingly enough, it put Congressman Cleo Fields and Speaker Mike Johnson on the same side. Mm-hmm. Because if the case goes in another direction, they could both lose their seats.
Absolutely. That's
one of the crazy twists of life. You know where you've been, you don't know where you're going, everybody. Hello, keep that thought uppermost in your mind. As we're going into the 2026 election season, what do you see, Representative Reynolds? Because we've got everything happening at one time. I mean, we've got these raids, and you know what? I just don't see them. They're not going to stop in the so-called blue cities. They're not. Because the thing is, what we're not talking about is the social instability that will proliferate with the economic insecurity. People cannot afford their food. They cannot afford rent. They cannot afford their mortgages. Folks got a lot of problems, white, black, brown, yellow, and red. And they're watching money. They're now, which is what happens when your money gets tight. You start asking about foreign aid. And wait, well, why are we putting all this money over there? Because, wait, you've taken $1 trillion out of my health care. Well, when your money gets tight, you start doing the line item veto. And if you just read the comments to stories on YouTube, newspapers, magazine articles, whatever, Americans on the right and the left, in between and outside, are getting very warm about this money. So, yeah. Having the police, when the president talked about the enemy within, he wasn't just talking about people on the left, because Charlie Kirk's audience was turning against him, so he had to pivot. I don't know where his heart was, but I do know where his audience was not, and they were not where he had been, and he had to move. Representative Reynolds.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, obviously, they were closing in on him on the Epstein file, and they were demanding accountability and transparency. And people like Charlie Kirk and others were saying, who were his biggest cheerleaders, they wanted the release of those files as well. So you're right. Going to your other issue in terms of 2026, Santita, I don't believe that he will stop with blue states and blue cities. I do believe that that is the target because he wants to go after urban areas that obviously are ran by Black or African American mayors first, and certainly that is the low hanging fruit because the right they always like to say that if you're a Black person is in a position and they are DEI anyway, right? Black people, regardless of the stats, meaning that no matter what the crime rate is, if it's down or if they're doing well, they're always going to, point to some type of deficiency in order to undermine them, right? That they would be able to do it better. So but in terms of stopping there, no, I think you're right. He doesn't plan to stop there. The whole objective, as I stated earlier, would be to create martial law, to create a police state where there's instability and therefore there is no ability to conduct a free and fair election. And so he is able to be a holdover president. I do believe that's his goal. I do believe that his minions will be okay with that because they have not pushed back on anything. I don't think that the U.S. Supreme Court would weigh in because they've already said for official acts, he pretty much has carte blanche king status immunity. So that is headed for a collision course in a constitutional crisis where he could then pit and have his weaponized Justice Department, who basically is his personal lawyer, his Attorney General Pam Bondi, his FBI Director Kash Patel, they could basically weaponize and say they are there's no election. I think that is where we're headed. So unless we get a hold of it over the next few months, Santita, if we go into next year with this, we're doomed. We're doomed. And I say we as Democrats, as African Americans, as people who aren't billionaires, people who stand to lose a lot. I'm very concerned about the safety of vulnerable, marginalized communities. I'm concerned about people continuing to be victims of his overzealous Department of Justice because he wants to square up on his political enemies. And I do believe that he would do anything to anyone that dared to try to stop him. So that is why it's so important that we show a united front because no one person, two persons are going to be able to stop him. It's going to take a collective we as opposed to a I. There is no body to come save us, right? There is no hero in a cape that will zoom in and save the day. It's going to take the collective will of the American people in good conscience to say, hey, no. And that's not just Black people. That's not just Democrats. That's Republicans saying, this ain't right. We may disagree with the Democrats on abortion or policy issue, but we don't believe that this should happen where we overthrow the Constitution. So that, Santita, is why it's so important that we have this conversation because a lot of people are still asleep at the wheel. A lot of people are still, when you're so focused on just trying to make ends meet, you're so focused on trying to keep the lights on, pay for those expensive eggs. You got rising costs of healthcare, daycare, inflation, tariffs, high unemployment. You ain't thinking about no third President Trump term. You're thinking about how am I going to survive today? You can't even forecast 2026 of November because you're trying to get through November of 2025. So that is why it's important that we have as many of these discussions as we can to put it out there in the ecosystem so that maybe it'll click. Maybe enough people will start talking about it where they can be engaged and say, you know what, I better start paying attention before this sneaks up on me and then it's too late. So I welcome the continued dialogue because we're not even talking about, and I'm sure you already have, this government shutdown. This further hurts the economy. We're in day 6. I don't see a real end in sight in terms of the government shutdown. Who's hurt? Working families, the poor, government workers. Who is unbothered? The billionaires and multimillionaires who are don't have to worry about a check. Their checks are interest on the money that's sitting in their banks that's not going to stop drawing interest. So I feel for working families. I feel for the poor. I feel for Black women whose unemployment numbers have went astronomically high. I fear for people who are at targets for these ICE raids and the National Guard. Those are the people that I fear for, Santita, and it's not getting any better any day soon.
Well, you know what? We're closing out, and I want to get a word from you, Daryl with 1 R, Attorney Daryl Jones, and then Reverend Daryl with 2 R's. I don't know who's right. I don't know who's wrong. I love you both. What can I tell you? Attorney Daryl Jones, WOLDC. He and Barbara Arnwine have one of the greatest shows you can imagine. 12 noon Tuesday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Go to WOLDC. Attorney Daryl Jones, closing thought.
Thank you, Santita. And so long as you're saying Daryl, whether it's 1 R or 2 R's, you're saying the right name. You know, you're in the perfect place. And Santita, you know, one thing I wanted to lift up as we close it out is to remember that today is a real special day across the country, particularly for African Americans. Today is the birthday of Fannie Lou Hamer, this October 6th. And so when we're talking about freedom fighters, we're talking about this, you know, this 5'0" a woman who died way too early, 57 years old, you know, and the fight that she put forward, you know, evicted from her plantation because she wanted to, it was registering to vote and wanted people to register to vote, was beaten in her jail cell, ordered to be beaten in her jail cell by Black men that were in the jail cell with her, and that the guards were over top of her to be certain that she was beaten, to try to stop her from registering people to vote. This is the type of conviction, this is the type of principle, this is the type of purpose we've got to step to in this moment. Imagine yourself being Fannie Lou Hamer and having what's going on in the country happen today. What would she do? What she would do is what we must do. We must stand in that breach. We must stand for our fellow citizens, for our fellow residents. We've got to stand forward. We've got to be certain that our registration, our voter registration is up to date. Check to be certain if they moved you around. Start preparing yourself for 2026 because the election for 2026 is not that far away. That's going to be the next best opportunity to put guardrails in place to try to roll back some of what we see that's happening in across our cities today. I'll close with this. Representative Ron Reynolds is 100% on the mark. It's what I've been saying from the beginning of this, that what the administration is trying to create right now is confusion and fear, particularly for the elections, so that you will not want to participate. You won't want to go to the polling place. You're going to see the National Guard and other ICE agents and everything else that are out there intimidating voters. That's going to be there. And if they win at creating the confusion and the fear and the intimidation, then they will continue to reign. But one thing that I do know is this: the same way that fear is contagious, courage is contagious, and that the more courage that we have in stepping forward and stepping out, the more courage other people will have, and we can roll back those things that are occurring with which we don't agree, Santita. That would be my closing message.
Well, amen to that. Let me get the Reverend Daryl Gray, the Right Reverend Daryl Gray with 2 R's. And he can give us some thoughts.
Well, I agree with my brother Daryl that no matter how many R's are in there, I'm just happy that I'm in this space with these people. I agree with everything. I think that the thing that holds us up, you're absolutely right. The memory of a Fannie Lou Hamer, the memory of a Rosa Parks, the memory of a Coretta Scott King, the memory of and listen, the current work of a Jacqueline Jackson. I mean, I think that those y'all continue to hold us up. And if you think about these numbers that Representative Reynolds talked about, not just the federal employees who have been furloughed and laid off and everything, but over 350,000 Black women are out of the workforce since Donald Trump. Over 350,000 Black women have been forced out of the workforce under Donald Trump. Black women are the most educated category in America. Not white men, not white women, not Black men, but Black women are educated. And so when you talk about this whole attack on DEI, it was attack on Black women specifically. That was the reality, because you are the most educated. And he has allowed white men, the least educated, to come in to replace you. These are all real issues. But if we don't begin, as Daryl said, to come together to talk about these issues and to get from our elected officials and others those talking points, it is organized chaos, and that organized chaos is strategic. It is intended to be that way, to keep us running from this, putting out this fire and this fire and this fire and this fire. And that is what this government is doing deliberately. But I'm confident, Santita, based upon these conversations and the work of your father and others, I'm reminded that we are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. That's what keeps us going. That is the word. That is what motivates us, continues to motivate us. And now let us push us back into the arms of each other. Let all of this organized chaos push us back into the arms of each other. Dr. King said something, and I'll close with this. And you said, we build alliances based upon necessity and not necessarily desirability. I'm looking forward to working with this new national Christian leadership movement, bringing us all back together under this tent. And let's keep hope alive. The only way we're going to keep hope alive is through not only these conversations, but what comes out of these conversations. And so let's put our plan together. Let's do it now. Let's do it now, and then let's execute it. Everybody staying in their lane. Everybody doing what they're good at. Nobody trying to be the knight in shining armor. Nobody trying to be the one person. Because we don't need the one person. We need the ones. we need all of the ones. And so thank you, Representative Reynolds, for saying that and bringing that back to bear. The Black church is ready and willing and able. I'm saying that because of the conversations I'm having with national leaders. We just need those talking points. We need y'all to let us know. Give us that direction. Give us that roadmap. Give us that toolkit. And we'll do the work. We're ready to do the work.
Well, you know what? I tell you, it is such a blessing to be able to talk with you, Reverend Darrell Gray, the Director of Social Action for the Progressive Baptist Convention, the Chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition and radio host on WOLDC 12 noon every Tuesday, Attorney Darrell Jones, and Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. It's always a joy to be with you. But I hope that as we continue to move forward, that we will think critically. One of the things that we learned during our campaigns is that the office of the presidency is just that. It is an office. It is a construct. It is an institution. And institutions are never about one person. We're looking at one person with an outsized personality and tremendous charisma. He is being used to carry out an agenda. Never before in a presidential inauguration have we seen so many publicly powerful people in one place. Be very clear, the most powerful people really don't show themselves. The wealthiest people in the world, there are trillionaires already. We don't see them, but they do exist. But the people who really are real, I mean, the persons who put people on the tickets, they were standing right there. So as we look at this administration, please don't make it about this one person, because it isn't. It really, really isn't. It is about a whole group of people who have a whole lot of interest. You better look at Larry Ellison and his son, who bought CBS News, who are looking to buy CNN, who bought TikTok, who were told by a leader of another country that they needed to seize our media, our news organs, so they can get out a certain agenda. You better understand that. We need to understand that once COVID collapsed the system, small businesses went out and everything. You could be standing in a store looking for something, and if you go on your phone, Amazon's got it. So the little neighborhood store that you used to get little batteries and whatnot from, well, no, they're gone now. If you want to get a job, you need to be on LinkedIn, Facebook, all of that. And guess what? You are being surveilled. You are getting a social credit score. They just don't call it thus in the United States. We need to understand who wants to seize the office of the presidency. And it's those persons who I just named and more. Oh, sure, they can put him, J.D. Vance, or anyone up. But be very, very clear. It's bigger than one person. It's not a person. It makes it very convenient when you are able to use one person who has this outsized personality and charisma. My father said the great regret that he has about President Trump, who is someone that he has known for a long time. He said, I wish he would use his charisma in a way that lifted people up. There's a reason that God is using him in this moment. You don't have to like him, but you need to understand that God has God's ways and we can't fathom these ways. And I'm still going to pray that his heart will be inclined in a way that will help to save the nation. I hope that we will begin to uncover the dark forces that are controlling our nation and that have us so off course. Our first president was an independent man. We've not had a president who was independent of a party since. George Washington did not like parties. He said, look, a two-party system will dissolve into tyranny. Is that not what we have now? The Democrats and Republicans, it's a left wing and a right wing, but they are on the same bird. And we are crashing, everybody. So let's think critically. Don't look at your side, my side, somebody's side. Look at the right side. That's all we need. Understand that everybody needs food, clothing, and shelter. An opportunity to develop their minds to the fullest extent, to develop their skills, and to be healthy. Think about that, everybody. Think about that. I love you. God bless you. And I thank you for sharing this time with all of us. It is such an honor to be able to speak with you, to be able to share with you. Now, let us all come together. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat or outsiders. I don't care about that. I'm not into parties. I'm into people. I want the people to win. So go on and be a Democrat. Go on and be a Republican. Go on and be an independent. Go be whatever you want to be. Just be human and be humane. And decide that you want your brother and your sister to do well. And if they do well, you can do well too. If someone needs a cup of sugar, do what we used to do. Give people a cup of sugar. Give them a cup of flour. If you know someone is not eating, give them some food. God's putting us in the position to make sure that we are our brothers and sisters' keepers, because we are. So come on, let's grow up in our politics and let's grow spiritually and make this country and this world all that it's supposed to be. We're but a thought away from changing everything. I am Santita Jackson. May God bless you. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. God bless you, everybody.